It's Lisa from Been There, Got Out, and now we are on for real. You know, we don't usually do Instagram lives on Mondays, but tonight's or this afternoon's guest is so significant, and this was so urgent that I thought that we really should do one today. And Vance, I see you. I'm just gonna get you since last night on digital security and technology, and there's been a ton of engagement because we know this is a huge issue within our community and also in the broader world. Hey, Vance, you did it again.
I
Perfect.
did it again.
Great.
So
Great.
sorry to interrupt.
No, no, that's okay. I was just saying that that this was such a, we don't usually do Instagram lives on Mondays, but we wanted to make sure we got you in as soon as possible, and everybody should know that you don't usually do live interviews, so we are really fortunate to have you. I had met you just a few days ago, I think, and taken extensive notes, and I planned this to just be a conversation between Chris and I to keep you anonymous, but then you got in touch over the weekend and said that something happened that was so disturbing that you figured it was too important. You want to introduce
Yeah.
yourself and talk about that?
Yeah. Well, we've had. I work with domestic violence. I came out of corporate executive protection. I had physical security originally, and we saw more and more cyber stalking of executives and tracking of their phones, and we had an entire C-suite where their phones were being tracked. So we started to use those skills in the corporate world, and then as I got out and started my own company working with others, we started to see. I started to see the need for that. I started working with domestic violence survivors or people with intimate partner violence and difficult divorces, just because there's so much technology out there and there's so many access ways that it really can be overwhelming a lot of the times. We talked I think I mentioned that to you, and when we first talked, I was like, when it gets overwhelming, just stop me and we'll take a break for a second.
Well, I don't know if I told you, but that's the number one adjective that we hear when people show up on our doorstep. They're just like, I am completely overwhelmed. And that's not even getting into the privacy and security issues usually. It's just being in a situation like this alone is overwhelming.
Oh, yeah. And then when you put, I don't have a way to relax in my home on top of that, because that's one of the things that I see is when I'm working with clients and stuff, they're like, there are cameras in my home or there's something in my home and I don't feel comfortable relaxing. So you don't get back to somewhat of a baseline even because you don't feel comfortable on your own sofa, or I don't have a safe space to vent even on my own. And that's also an issue. I can't talk to anybody, email them, things like that.
Yeah, it's like there's nowhere safe.
I had a lady that told me one time that her car was her only safe space, but since I know that he's tracking it, I don't even feel safe there, and going through and looking for tracking devices on the car, when we found them and removed them, she was like, now I have a place I could just go and get away. I can go for a drive. I just go sit in my car and feel safe. And I think that's really, really important.
I can't even, as you say that, I'm thinking we have a huge percentage of clients that call us from their cars. Some of them are just traveling, but that's part of it too.
But yeah, that's the only place I can have a private conversation or think I can have a private conversation. And that's one of the things that we look at is the communications. And the other thing when you talk about the overwhelming is over the last decade or more, 2 decades, we have been integrating more and more digital aspects into our lives, online accounts, emails, online shopping, Uber, Lyft apps, social media. And we haven't really paid a lot of attention as a society to the security of that digital life that we've been leading. So it is going to be overwhelming because we didn't get here overnight. And, and now we're like, oh, I've got to fix it overnight now. And that's very overwhelming when you're struggling emotionally and or you're being abused in other ways with a divorce. That's just one more fire.
Right. And I know we talked about how stalking is not just a physical issue, and that in your work you see it becoming more and more of a digital or cyber issue.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's one of the things, because it's just so easy now. I don't have to, stalkers don't have to physically go to your house anymore. I think I did have a conversation once about just classifying cyber stalking and stalking as just stalking. Because I was like, if I'm chasing you around on a bike, I'm technically using technology to stalk you. I'm just using 100-year-old technology. It really is just invasion of privacy. It's people are taking advantage of the lack of technical skills. I've got this great iPhone's supposed to work out of the box. I don't have to do a lot to it, and it just works. And we don't understand a lot of how it works. That's one of the things that we see all the time is, when we talk about the home network, your Wi-Fi network is like, well, I've got a password on my Wi-Fi network. Yes, but did we change the router password? If my phone's exposed, my laptop's compromised. Well, is it the network? Is it the device? Is it is it all of them? There could be multiple areas, and that's when people just start to go, I don't know, I can't think.
Me already. Like, oh boy.
Yep. And that's what we do is we kind of come in and say, one of the things we look at, and I told you this is like our first value with the company is compassion, because people, we're not Ferrari. People don't come to us out of want. People come to us at some level of fear, and if we're not compassionate, then we can't understand what that fear or concern is and really address it, because that's really the point, is how to address what your concern is.
Yeah, and so speaking of that, one thing that I thought was kind of interesting, not to say that law enforcement does not have compassion, but that you come from a different background than law enforcement, and that makes a difference here. Can you talk about that?
Well, I work with a lot of law. We actually train police officers and police departments in cyber stalking techniques and detection. There are a lot of officers I know who have a lot of compassion and feel very helpless when people come in and they're like, I don't know how to find the cameras in your house. I don't know how to do this. And so I do see that. One of the things that I do coming from a corporate world and the corporate side of security is law enforcement by its very nature is the way we're recruited and trained and we hire and practice it. Law enforcement is a reactive profession. Once you're speeding, then they pull you over. That's how it's supposed to work. In our business with corporate executives, we have to be proactive. We need to be ahead of the curve. It's like preventative maintenance with the doctor. What can I do now to protect me 5 or 10 years from now in some ways? And that's another way that it becomes less overwhelming. It's, if you're doing small things to move forward, that helps you go, okay, I've got this done. Like when we do passwords with everyone and we teach our clients how to use a password manager, they look and go, oh, wow. I was so stressed. I was so thinking about that. It's like, that was actually pretty easy. And I was like, oh, that's one less thing you're worrying about, and that's, we do come from a different perspective than law enforcement in a lot of ways. We work together with them a lot. We volunteer with and work with the domestic violence high-risk task force here in Westchester County that also involves law enforcement. And we share information back and forth. And I think that's the other thing that's important is, because law enforcement can be so overwhelmed with all the responsibilities that they're given, they also need someone to say, hey, this is something you guys didn't see that we knew. They do need help from the private sector a lot of times to just stay abreast, because things move so quickly. Yeah,
and you had said that with law enforcement, like you mentioned, but you specifically said often it's that if someone hasn't done something, they haven't broken any laws, that law enforcement can't do anything. And that's what's so
a lot of times
upsetting, is people see, like in our community, it's like, this is going to happen. Can't you see? Like, look at the pattern of behavior. And they feel so helpless because the police can't legally do anything yet.
There's officers like, I can take notes of it, but I can't charge them with anything. When we talk about restraining orders and that aspect, a lot of times we have to go to them with information so that they have the data they can do to do their job. And I know a lot of police officers that are frustrated with that. They're like, I feel like my hands are tied sometimes, but I think that that's one of the things that we've actually seen is people coming to us and saying, like the camera detection that we do, that's something that we've been working to train departments on, so that the average patrol officer can come into the house and say, no, I didn't find anything. You can rest this evening, or I did find something. Let me call the detective and get him out here to document this. Let me call the technical team because we've got something now. The way that we do that is a very simplified form and it's easy to teach any patrol officer. We've talked with departments that are like, well, it's kind of like a DWI. I don't need to train every officer, but if I train my supervisors, I can have somebody come out and make that call. And that also empowers the officers to say, oh, I can go out to the house. I can tell someone, hey, you can relax right now, or hey, we did find something and we're on it, and help them be more active. Because cyber stalking is really something that everyone is struggling to learn right now.
Yeah, it's funny because there was just an article in the New York Law Journal. I got the headline that said that now there's all these task forces working on cyber stalking, and I was about to send it to you, but I didn't have time yet. I'll send it later. But speaking of stalking, I think people might be surprised. We talked about whether it's predominantly male or female. What have you found?
My stalkers are predominantly male a lot of the time, and even in the corporate world, when I have a CEO that is having issues, they do tend to also target, like if the CEO is male, they will target the spouse for harassment. If a public official that I'm working with is male, they will target their female spouse. If the public official is female, they will target the public official. And if the CEO is female, they will target her and not the male spouse. So I've even found in targets that it is much more likely for the woman to be targeted.
Interesting. Yeah, not surprising. Okay, so speaking of, I'm thinking getting in touch, probably a lot of it is through phones. So why, you had said that your cell phone is your de facto social security number. Talk about that. Yeah,
your phone number is now given out for everything. Your phone number is how you're identified at the doctor's office, at the restaurant, for your table. We tell people that your phone number is essentially a de facto social security number at this point. If I have your phone number, I can find out much more. I can actually find out much more information about you than I can if I have your social security number. Which is I can find residence information. I can find savings programs. I can say, oh, do you shop at this grocery store? There's a lot of information that can be found out just from your phone number. And if your phone number is tied to a soft credit pull, it's essentially a public record. And by soft credit
what's a soft credit?
I was going to say by soft credit pull, so if I go into AT&T or T-Mobile or Verizon and I run my credit and they give me a subscription where I pay my bill every month, that's a soft credit pull. They've tied my SIM card number to my social security number, which means that number gets populated into the data brokers.
Oh boy.
So
should we not give out our phone number? Go ahead.
Well, we do a couple different things, especially in highly lethal cases. We do several things to moderate that. One of the things that we do is with the SIM card, also the SIM number on the phone is the number you need to track the phone. If you have the SIM card number, then you can get the location data for that number. So like with my phone, I don't actually use the number that is the SIM number that's attached to it. I don't even know what that number is because I never give it out. And we do that with high risk individuals. We will set them up with basically a pay-as-you-go SIM system, so it's not tied. It's also used a private pay method to pay for the bill. Because if you say I'm getting phone calls and I'm being stalked by someone and harassing phone calls, and I go change my number, but I go down to Verizon and say, give me a new phone number. Well, because it's on my account, that number is going to be public record. It's going to be really easy to find within hours or days. So one of the things that we do in that situation is we would take the old number, we would port it into something like Google Voice, because once the stalker knows that the number's been disconnected, they'll start looking for the new number. If we port it into Google Voice, then we can give it to the attorney that's representing you to help prove the registered, the restraining order. We can give it to the law enforcement detective that's investigating it, and they can log into the account and see the messages and the voicemails that are coming in from the abuser. And because that number is still active, that person will continue to call that number. And then we will go through and set up a phone in a different way with a different app that we usually give you multiple numbers. We give you a home number, a work number, and then what we call our throwaway number. So when you go to the grocery store, you go somewhere and they're like, oh, we need your cell phone number. You just give them that one. That's what I actually do on my phone. And we've removed the SIM from giving it out and kind of obscuring the ownership of the phone, so to speak.
So, oh boy,
It sounds kind of complicated, but it works in practice very well.
Yeah. All right. So, you started talking about public records. Like, can you get into detail? Because I thought it was really interesting what came out of how can public records be dangerous?
Oh, if I'm a perfect example of this is during the pandemic, we had school districts. We'll use school districts, for example. You're at a school district meeting and someone gets up and says something one way or the other about a mask that you like or don't, doesn't matter which side. If you own a home in the county, someone can pull their phone up, go to the tax records office, type in your name, and boom, there's your home address. It'd be like, oh, we'll finish this conversation at home. If you're in Suffolk County, I believe it's Suffolk County in Long Island, you actually get a sketch layout of the property. And in some counties, like in Bexar County in San Antonio, you get descriptions. You have so much square footage. You have 2 bathrooms upstairs. It gives you a description of the home, and that's just from the county records page. We had conversations with public officials about, well, it's public record. Well, who's the public that record is meant for? Is it Westchester County citizens? Is it citizens of a village, citizens of a town, citizens of the state, or anyone in the world? Once you put it online, it's available to anybody in the world. So we're looking at redefining what is a public record. Who's the public that record should be available for? That's what we look at with cyber stalking and cybersecurity at a state task force level.
Since talking to you, I started noticing things more, maybe paying a little more attention, and I saw something that talked about how you should go to your what's it called, like where your house is, I don't know if it's Zillow or something with Google, and you can blur the image of your property. Have you heard of that?
You can do it with Google. You can do a Google blur. You can do it with Zillow. The other thing one of the things that we've done with clients is we'll go through when we do what we call a digital footprint assessment, and we'll pull images. Sometimes there's still images from your home that are on Zillow, and you can actually request Zillow to remove those images from the page itself. But the other thing that we ran into was they're on the Zillow page, but the internet is archived on a regular basis. And we had to go to the archive pages and find the Zillow archive page with your residents and have the archive remove those as well. So it does get overwhelming. It was overwhelming for us when we started dealing it. We were like, oh wait, we got to do this now. Oh, and we found this too. So walking clients through that in a calm way and a relaxed way is really, look, we're going to face this one challenge at a time because it looks like there's a lot, but we're going to do this and we're going to get that done. And then we're going to do this and that's going to solve this problem. And that's really how we have to approach it.
Yeah, I can imagine for sure. So speaking of data collection, you said that this is an $11 billion a year industry, and you mentioned about online data removal, and that's kind of what you do. Are there other ways that you can get data off archives? So, or what are some other types of data that are make you more vulnerable? So, for example, where you live, what else?
Well, where you live is part of it, but the other aspect to online data and having this data accumulated is that it not only can give your current residents your current phone number, things of that nature, but with a historical perspective, it allows me to really target on a social engineering attack. If I know where you lived, I know the apartments that you lived in when you were in college. I'm like, oh, I went to such and such school too. I lived in these apartments. You're like, oh, I lived in those apartments too. When we talk with hackers, one of the biggest conferences in the world is Black Hat that they do in Vegas. It's the ultimate hacker conference. And, the biggest trophy at Black Hat is for social engineering. It's not about who can hack phones, who can hack the self-driven Tesla from 2 miles away. It's about who can hack people. And that is the biggest, that is the other part of the cybersecurity and shoring up yourself is not just passwords, 2-factor, but understanding those social engineering attacks, those phishing emails that you get where you're like, that just seems suspicious to me, things of that nature are part of the issue that come with all of it. That data, that historical data from where you went to school, where you live, gives me all kinds of social engineering entrances.
Yeah. You know, when you say that, I'm thinking about something that happened fairly recently, and I've heard several people, like older people, will get a call from a frantic teenager, 20-something-year-old going, "Grandma or Grandpa, like I'm stuck here and you need to send money," and oh my God, and they freak out, and then they're ready to send money because they think it's a grandchild. Have you heard of that one? Is that what
I've seen things
about?
like that. I haven't had one specific with elder abuse in that area. That's kind of how we classify that. That's an elder scam. I've seen a lot of other scams with elders. We saw one where they would steal your credit card information, and then they would call you from the bank, or from what looked like, it would actually come up on the caller ID as like such as Chase, Bank of America. So you would answer, and because you had fraudulent claims on your card. So you call the bank, freeze the card. They give you the PIN number for your fraud case. They would call back, pretending to be from the bank, and say, "Hey, I need your PIN number so that I can finish this fraud information." You give them the PIN number, and then they open the card up and start charging again. We've seen that happen, and that was a hotel breach, where they breached the reservation system of the hotel and didn't actually get the card numbers, but they could see who had reservations, and they called them and said, "Hey, if you want to keep your reservation tonight, we need a new card." And they were like, "Oh yeah, no problem." And they gave them the card, and then they started charging, and then the rest of it happened from there. So I've seen a lot of social engineering attacks mixed with breaches.
Yeah, I'm trying to jot down all these questions as they come in, like waiting to ask you a little bit later. But let's see. I was going to say that I'll just start asking a couple of them. WhatsApp, does that track people? Can people be tracked through WhatsApp?
WhatsApp is owned by Facebook, so we suggest we suggest not using WhatsApp. We work with multiple clients with secure communication needs. We have a couple of different apps that we use that are also free. We use Signal as a backup because it requires a phone number and it can only be used on one device at a time. But for most of our communications, we use an app called Wire, which only requires an email address and can be used on multiple. I can have it on my laptop and on my phone, so I don't have to log out. And that's the one that we use in-house. It's the same capabilities as WhatsApp, except it's not. WhatsApp was secure, but Facebook bought it out about 2 years ago, so we consider that not to be. There's a difference between. That's the other thing is, WhatsApp is secure, but it's not private. We have a conversation with our clients many times about the difference between privacy and security. Google is very secure. Google is not private. If I'm using a Gmail account, that is something that anybody at Gmail could access should they so desire with a certain access level. So, you know, I use to explain the difference between privacy and security, I always use the example of, if I built you a house out of bulletproof glass, it would be very secure, but it would not be very private. You know, those are two different subjects that we tend to use overlappingly.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, another quick answer question is two-factor authentication a good or bad thing?
It is an awesome thing, and it is something you have been using for years that you don't even realize you've been using, that's just being applied to a new system. So when we talk about two-factor in our classes, we use a software token for people. Certain people, we use a hardware key. There's multiple layers. We tell people, do not, if they only allow you to use SMS texting for two-factor, you know, find another service, because that's not secure at all. But the way people are like, oh, it's two-factor, I don't understand. And I was like, two-factors, think of your ATM card. Two-factor is something that you have and something that you know. Your two-factor authentication is, I put my ATM card in, there's my PIN number, I have to have both to get money out of the ATM. That's two-factor authentication. We're just now needing to apply it to our social media accounts and our bank accounts and everything else. So yes, we actually, in our personal cybersecurity class, we actually walk everybody through implementing password managers and two-factor authentication, because that that actually stops 90% of the breaches, just implementing those two. If you update your system, you use a password manager and have a strong, unique password for every account, and you use two-factor authentication, you're solving 90% of your problems.
Wow. Okay, we got another quick one before some of the longer ones.
Yeah.
How about Snapchat?
Snapchat's a social media system, and we believe that as social media platforms, they're meant to be public. So, we tend to, anything that needs to be held personal, anything that you don't want, like I used to say, printed on the front page of the newspaper, we would not really list in social media. We tend to, if you need to have conversations with your coach or with, use something like Wire, Wire, Signal, something of that nature. Those are really, if you need a private communication between you and a family member, you and a coach, an attorney, those are actually the ones that we recommend and help people set up and use.
Oh, speaking of that, what about Zoom? If we're having a meeting on Zoom and we think it's private, is it? Oh, no.
Zoom is good. We do use Zoom for certain trainings, as long as you use the password and rotate that password so you're not reusing the second code. Zoom can be very fine. If we're having an in-house corporate meeting about some clients' specific data, we do not use Zoom for that. But if I'm doing a one-on-one training with you, we generally tend, with our one-on-one trainings, we use Zoom for our one-on-one trainings.
Okay, good. I'm relieved.
Yeah,
because we're
not sharing in our trainings. We're not sharing anything that you can't go find for yourself for the most of the part. So but it's also easy, and if we set it up in a secure way, it works really well.
Okay, good. All right. So one thing that I thought was also really fascinating was in the past when we talked to experts about if somebody has a feeling that their house has cameras or bugs planted in, we were told, it'll cost so much money to sweep the house that it might be better just to move. But you said that there's something that's different, that digital things have something in common. Can you say what that is and how that impacts the statement I just said?
Yeah, well, every electronic device, by its very nature, requires one thing: electricity. It requires power, and power puts off heat. And so when we were working with executives, we came in and we actually had a crew come in and do an electronic sweep of the boardroom. And we were, like I said, they were monitoring cell phones for the executives. So when we were on the road, they were like, "We need you to sweep our hotel rooms. We need you to come through every one of the executives' hotel rooms and make sure there's no cameras or things inside there." And we're like, "Well, we can't travel with this massive device. We need something we can do on the road. How do we find a way to do that?" And we sat down and discussed it with the team, and we're like, "Well, we need what electronic devices have, because they may connect to the internet. They may record locally on an SD card. They may use Bluetooth. Well, if I scan Wi-Fi, I'm missing 2 out of the 3. So how do we find something that all the electronic devices have in common that we can easily search for in a non-technical way?" And we hit on power, because power puts off heat, and we use a thermal camera like HVAC techs use, and we literally scope the walls, and we look for any heat source that's questionable. And that's why we can train police officers to keep that camera in the car, keep it at the police station. They can come out. It's not a technical, it's very basic, but you can't hide the heat. You can't hide the power source. That's
amazing. So instead of something taking 12 hours, it might take 2 hours?
Yeah, we'll do a hotel room in 20 to 30 minutes. We've done apartments in an hour. We've done a larger house, depending on the complexity of the house, could take 2 to 3 hours, but it depends on the size of the property. Sometimes we come in and I've come in and done a 1-bedroom apartment in an hour and a half. And done a double search and checked the vehicle too.
Wow. Okay. So you're in New York, so you're close to us. So if we need it, that's great. But what about people in different parts of the country or the world?
We do a lot of we can come in and help with, like, my email's been compromised. We also have a lot of things that we can provide that, kind of do it yourself. We have a lot of clients who are like, "I don't want to do it myself," but we also have a lot of clients who are like, "I can do that myself." And we kind of work as a resource clearinghouse for certain things. So, there's a lot of people that if they're in the UK or they're in California, we can supply some resources. We can do some consultations on how to do that. We also do, like, if they're in California or something, we have gone through and trained a local police department to do the camera searches. That is one of the things that we like to do, is get out and work with law enforcement and say, hey, because they're excited. They're like, oh wait, I don't have to call somebody to do this, So that's one of the things that we do. We do consult with people across the country and across the world, and we've looked at login. Let's look at your Gmail account. Let's see if things are being forwarded. Let's see what devices are attached to that. Physical stuff we do here. If we're working with a law firm that's in California, maybe they've got multiple cases, and we have someone come out for several days and do multiple clients at the same time. So that's always an option too.
Yeah, somebody just asked, can an individual buy the heat sensor thing?
Yeah, we actually buy ours on Amazon for like $200.
Really? Oh my gosh. That's amazing.
And it works on, it's the one we use actually attaches to a phone because we needed something that would fit in a carry-on bag for travel. We do have the class where we teach people how to use that. We teach law enforcement how to use it, but we could do a class with individuals that hey, I want to buy the camera, I want to learn how to use this. That is something that we could, if you had the camera on site, we could walk you remotely through how to do it for yourself.
Amazing. I know at the end of this interview, let me just check the time. Yeah, I want to get all this information so people can find you and learn about your classes, but not yet. Yeah. Okay, so another thing, because I have all these other questions that are coming in. Let's talk about how somebody can get in and change someone else's password, because I read some comments today about even though they got away from the person, the other person kept getting into their accounts and changing their passwords.
Well, one of the things that we do with everybody is when we set up with an initial client, we will go through and say, I saw one of the comments, somebody they've put a key logging machine on, so they know everything on my phone. Mm-hmm. So on my laptop, they've got my passwords. So one of the things that we did is we would go through and we create a bootable USB, and we'll boot the computer sometimes in a completely new operating system, which shuts down anything that's on there. And we would go through and create a password file for them, a password manager account, and then walk them through how to go to each one of their systems and change that password and add the two-factor authentication. Because once you have both, then it doesn't matter if your password does get breached, they still have to bypass the two-factor authentication. So that gives you that second layer. If we've had even businesses that have come to us where their Instagram account was hacked, and then someone deleted it on the way out. So all their years of building their Instagram account were just gone overnight. And we're like, well, if we come in, we put passwords in place, we put two-factor in place, it's less likely for that to happen. And that's how we focus on that, is if your passwords have been breached, we need to make sure that we have a secure place to change those passwords, log in from a different device. When we go into, say it's a Gmail account, we want to go through, we change, look and see what devices are connected. We want to go look and see if emails are being forwarded to another email address. That's something we see all the time, is they got into your account, maybe they are locked out now because you did change your password and add two-factor, but we didn't go in and look and see if they were forwarding emails to a different email address. Mm-hmm. Because that's another way that we've seen people access your communications, is not, they had access to the account at one time, they forward all the emails to their email address, and you never went in and saw that they were doing that.
Okay, so more questions. What about smart TVs? And I know you're going to talk about Alexa and the internet.
Well, the Internet of Things is one of our favorite new things. Everybody's got, we didn't stop with smartphones. You said we have smart TVs, we have smart refrigerators, we have smart thermostats and light bulbs and doorbells and everything you could possibly imagine. With our clients, what we do, if you must use a smart device, we will go through and set up a second network at the house that is just the smart devices. We will go through to each one of the Ring doorbell, for example, And just like with the Wi-Fi router, we will go through to the administrator section and change the default password, because that's how so many of these devices get accessed. We see someone who is being monitored by their neighbor's Ring doorbell from across the street because they set it up and didn't change the default password. Just like we have Google, if I Google been there, got out, and I come up with the website, I come up with YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, everything, the book, congratulations, by the way. I see that. We also have search engines like Google that can search the Internet of Things. So I can look on a block. I can look for houses that may have cameras or devices that are open, and I can watch the feed from there. So sometimes you have to have a conversation with the neighbor and say, hey, you didn't set this up right, and now this person is stalking me through your camera. So that's one of the things that we look at with the Internet of Things. People are like, oh, they're listening to me. It's like, well, if you're having Alexa, that's kind of the point, because Alexa's sitting there waiting for the word Alexa to be said. So it is constantly listening, in that way. One of the things that we've done with phones, we actually use these with executives. There's a device called a mic lock. It's a very small. This one plugs into a three-quarter phone jack, but it makes the phone think that there's a microphone installed. So it disables all the microphones on the camera on the phone. When we swept the boardroom for bugs, I was like, well, you just let everybody walk in with a listening device. We bought a box of the mic locks and set them by the door, so everybody walked in would put one in their phone. They would sit down. When they left, they'd throw it in the basket and disable the microphones while everybody was in the boardroom. You can do that for the house if you wanted to. You could do that with your phone or your laptop if you think they're monitoring you through the laptop speakers.
Wow. Okay. What about, let's see, situations, someone gets weird notifications that their voice to text is vulnerable. What does that mean?
I saw that, and I was like, I need to see what platform you're on. My first question to that is, my first question to everybody when we look at phones or things of that nature, my first question is, do you need that? Because if you don't need it, the more apps you have on your phone, the more vulnerabilities you have. When we go through with password management, we go through our online accounts, and people are always like, I didn't realize I had this many accounts. And I was like, do you need this? When you're going through, because we'll give you action items to go through once we do the class, and then we follow up with a checkup and say, hey, what'd you find? Oh, it was easy. Hey, I found like 7 or 10 different accounts that I don't even use anymore. And I was like, did you delete them? And they're like, yeah. I was like, because I don't need them. I'm not using them. And I was like, think about any application that you're using on your phone. Do you absolutely need it? So, for example, I use my phone as a phone. I use it to check email when I'm away from the office. And I use it as a camera because nobody takes a camera with them anywhere anymore. And that's it. I don't have on my regular device, I don't have social media apps on there. I have my communication apps that I use internally and with clients. I think I have a total of about 15 apps on my phone altogether. And I use my cell phone at home like we used to use a landline. I put the ringer on, I set it in the other room, and if it rings, I have to get up and go get it. I use my phone as a phone and nothing else. So if I'm doing social media, if I'm doing anything like that, I'm normally on my laptop. If I'm doing banking, I'm on my laptop. Very rarely will I use a banking app on my phone. But there are ways to secure those. So if that's the other thing about what we do is every single person is different. You have different concerns than I do. Your client may have a different concern than you do. So when we work with someone, we have to adjust to whatever. I need to have my banking app on my phone. I need to do remote deposits. Okay, well then let's make sure we're doing it this way.
I'm looking at the time going, we're definitely going to have another one of these conversations. What about, let's see, somebody asked, what's the most secure Maps app for phones?
There's one is a little clunky. We've used I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's also an offline version. I do use Google Maps for my phone, but the way my phone is set up, I have an anonymous account with Google, so they don't actually know it's me, and that's the one that I use. So we set up an anonymized Apple ID or an anonymized Play Store account, so that when that data is different, when we do our phone setups, we have an anonymized account. I believe it's OBS Maps. I'll put a link. I'll go back and comment on the video and add that to the video, because I want to look that up specifically. It's not as easy to use as Google Maps, because Google Maps is super user friendly, but that's because they want it to be that way. But I can add that to the comments later.
Okay, great. What about how abusers use kids' devices? I've heard stuff about Nintendo. Nintendo being very dangerous.
I have
old
seen.
console.
Yeah. Well, if it's an old enough console, it doesn't have internet access, so that's awesome. Yeah, if it's an old original Nintendo, maybe, yeah. But yeah, we have seen people try to log in. We've seen with cameras on phone, not just on, but on televisions. We have seen some gaming systems where they've actually used them to like communicate with the child when they weren't supposed to be communicating with the child. Mm-hmm. So monitoring that aspect, one of the things we do, we have a lot of conversations with clients about children and social media, the safety, how to have that conversation with your children, how to talk with them about gaming devices, how to open that door and have a conversation. I don't have a teenager, so I know that's going to be difficult, but there are ways when they first start getting into social media to open the door. And how, like, our first conversation with a kid is we're like, oh, let's come up with a creative username for you, because we don't want Vance13 at Instagram, as your username. What defines your personality? Let's have something. Let's be creative. And when you open that door and you start having fun as a game with them, then they start talking about more things, and maybe it opens you up to saying, well, this is why I don't want you to post it this way, because it's for safety reasons. And it's the same conversation about why our parents had with us. You don't talk to strangers and this and that
mm-hmm.
nature.
Yeah, much higher level now. All right, another little question. Someone whose ex set up a Nest thermostat like years ago, moved out. Is there any way that they're tracking anything through there? It doesn't even matter at this point. Like if they did it remotely.
If they set the Nest up remotely, there's with a Nest there is a way to go do and kind of like, just like we had this issue, very similar issue happened with like the Wi-Fi router at home, where someone changed the administrator password on the Wi-Fi router. There is a way to go in and do a hard reset where you have like the social security, not the social security number, sorry, the serial number, where if you have access to that, you can do a hard reset and start over. Because if you sell the house, that's it's one of the features. So there's a way to go through and reset that. We do tend to go through with people who've had a device and that they shared with someone, like an iPad or something, be like, hey, let's do a hard reset. Let's reload. Sometimes when we do someone who's being stalked like that, we'll go through and let's create a new Apple ID for you. Let's just start from, yeah, I paid for these apps, but yeah, we'll start over again, because that generally seems to be the best way to do it, is to just say let's just reboot it. Let's get a new ID. Let's log into the App Store again. Let's get rid of all the stuff that you don't have. And that's usually the way we do a lot of it is let's look at your machine. You think somebody's on there? We'll just get the files off that you want, and we'll wipe it and start over. The other benefit to that is when you do on a laptop, when you do a wipe on a laptop, you free up a lot of space. You clean up a lot of junk that's been on there for a while, and it ends up being faster sometimes because you got rid of a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I'm just, again, checking the time and thinking, oh, what about in our initial conversation, you said that you like to stay left of bang. What does that mean?
Well, there's an EP, we train with State Department and other officials, and they did domestic diplomatic protections and things like that. So we did work with firearms training, and a lot of the things that they have is in the industry there's a concept known as left of bang, and bang is when the incident happens. In the original situation is when the gunshot happens or when the IED explodes, and once the bang happens, you're being reactive, and you're having to do whatever the situation forced you to do. that's what they call right of bang. What we want to do with our clients is we want to be proactive. We want to be on the left side of the incident, because you look at that incident as a timeline, and here's the future, here's where we are right now. If we're on the left side, we still have time to make decisions, and we still have time to make our own decisions and not react to an incident. We can take control, because if you're playing in a reactive mode as an athlete or as an individual, you're not in control of the situation because you're having to react to the other person.
Yeah, really important. Okay, so now I'm going to wind it up, and we are going to plan a part 2, of course. But how can people access your services and find you?
Well, we have if they're following us on LinkedIn, on Instagram, we have a link in bio that has a section where they can go schedule a consultation. We do like a 30-minute discovery call to see what's going on. It doesn't cost anything. Talk about your situation. Just because so many people have so many questions. We also, on the link, have access to our personal digital hygiene class. You can purchase right there on the website. That's a 2-hour session with a 1-hour follow-up that'll walk you through password management. Like I said, they can DM us here on Instagram, and or they can go to the website with the link in the contact link in the bio. There's our company phone number. Email address, there's a form you can fill out, or you can, any one of those ways, whatever's comfortable for you.
Well, thank you so much, Vance. I have a feeling you're going to be hearing from a lot of people who are not only watching this now, but when it becomes a podcast and on the YouTube channel, the greater community, because it's such an important issue.
Well, I will try to follow along and answer any of the questions that I see come up in the comments, or we'll try to answer any of the questions on the podcast or anything else, and feel free to, we'll sit down and talk about when we can do it again.
All right, thank you so much, Vance, and congratulations on the upcoming big events in your life.
Thank you. You have a great week, and I hope everybody learned a lot, and I hope everything goes well this week.
Yeah, you too. All right, talk soon. Bye.
Talk soon. Bye.